Vine sat curled up on the couch, a thick book resting in her lap. She was so engrossed in her reading that she didn't hear Jungkook come into the room. She only noticed him when he leaned over the back of the couch. His hand rested on her shoulder as he glanced at her book with a faint smirk. Jungkook, still reading that? She rolled her eyes without looking up and said, Yes, and I would get through it faster if someone wasn't always interrupting me. Jungkook chuckled softly. I thought you liked my interruptions. Wine. Keep telling yourself that, Mr. John. She replied, though she couldn't help the small smile tugging at her lips. Jungkook. Mr. John, since when were we so formal? She finally looked up, catching his gaze, and she knew that whatever book she was trying to read had lost its charm against him. Jungkook leaned closer, his lips brushing her cheek. Jungkook, put it down, just for a minute. At that, she also melted. Setting the book aside with a sigh, she said, 5 minutes, then I'm going back to it. Jungkook, deal, he whispered. His eyes softened as he looked at her, and how she felt her heart flutter. Just a little, still not quite used to how close he could be, and yet how safe he made her feel. After giving her a soft kiss on the lips, he leaned back, sitting beside her on the couch and pulling her legs over his lap. Jungkook, I still don't get why you read this late at night. Don't you ever sleep? Vine chuckled, rolling her eyes. And miss the peace and quiet? It's the only time you're not dragging me off somewhere. He grinned, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her knee. Jungkook, you know, I don't mind giving you all the peace you want, but I'm not sure you would last long without me interrupting. She didn't reply, her cheeks warming slightly at the intensity in his eyes. They stayed like that for a moment, close, just breathing each other in. Then he gave a sigh, pulling back slightly. Jungkook, all right, go back to your book, but just remember, I'm only letting you go for tonight. Fine. So gracious of you, she teased, picking up her book again, but she couldn't resist one last glance at him. She saw him watching her with a faint smile, a look she knew was something just for her. Next day, Vine woke up and looked at her surroundings. She didn't find Jungkook beside her and immediately sat up. Vine, did I wake up late again? Vine, but wait, I was on the couch and she smiled, realizing that he must have put her on the bed and put on that blanket too. She blushed a bit, but then panicked again. Vine, I didn't even get to say goodbye. How will I even spend my day? She sighed, and then an idea hit her mind. She decided to go to his office to meet him for a few minutes, and then she can explore the building, as she never once went to his office before. She sat in the car after getting ready. She didn't even know the exact address, but the driver knew, so she sat in the car comfortably, using her mobile phone. After reaching, she told the driver to go home with the car because she will come with Jungkook at night. Wan stepped into the lavish lobby of her husband Jungkook's headquarters. She was so excited to surprise Jungkook, imagining his smirk at her sudden surprise. She approached the reception desk with a smile and said, I'm here to see my husband, Jeon Jungkook. The receptionist barely glanced at her, focusing on her monitor as she replied, Do you have an appointment with Mr. Jeon? Vine was surprised that the receptionist didn't even look at her. Jungkook's wife she was. That wouldn't be something casual. But the receptionist knew that there are girls who claim that every day trying to meet him. Vine blinked in surprise. No, but I don't need one. I'm his wife. The receptionist finally looked up and said, Miss Joan doesn't usually come without an appointment. Please schedule a meeting. She nodded angrily and said, Fine. I wanted to surprise him, but whatever. I'll just call him. She opened her handbag to find her phone, and for a second the receptionist looked at Vine in shock and nervousness. After a few seconds of searching the bag, she realized that she left her phone in the car. She closed her eyes forcefully and took a deep breath. Shit. She looked at the receptionist and said, I forgot my phone in the car. The receptionist smiled, knowing these kind of tricks. Then you should at least come with a phone next time. Vine, could you at least call him and let him know that I'm here? Receptionist, listen, miss, I can't disturb him over matters like this. If I start doing it, then the day will end, but he won't be able to work in peace at all. Receptionist, I'd rather like you to go from here before I call the security. Vine's patience began to thin. She wasn't trying to flex her position, but the lack of recognition grated on her. Vine, excuse me, mind talking to me with manners? Also, one call wouldn't hurt him. He would immediately know. She was speaking loudly, and Jungkook's secretary, who was ignoring this matter for a while, finally stepped in. Is there a problem here? Vine straightened her shoulders. Yes, I'm here to see my husband. The receptionist seemed to think I need an appointment. The secretary gave a dismissive laugh. Mr. John is extremely busy. Vine, I'm not leaving until I see him. She started getting angry. What would he lose for a 1 second call? Nothing. But they make it seem too much. The secretary's expression darkened. Listen, miss, you don't get to make demands here, he said, holding her from her shoulders and said, If you don't go yourself, I will have to drag you out myself. Vine, what are you doing? Leave me. She tried to get rid of his grip, but she couldn't. Finally, she stepped on his shoes with her heels forcefully, making him groan in pain and leave her. But as soon as he left her, he slapped her on her face hardly. Vine's eyes widened, but before she could do anything back, she saw her husband coming towards her, casually without looking in her direction, but at his phone. She scoffed hardly and looked at the secretary with utmost anger. You guys are done for. The secretary held her arm once again, with more force this time, and started dragging her off, making her scream. Jungkook looked up as soon as she screamed, and his eyes widened. He quickly ran and held his secretary's hand, with a grip so tight that it could fracture his hand. What exactly is going on here? He asked, looking at the secretary dead in the eyes. The secretary left Vine's arm in pain and looked down before Jungkook. This girl was constantly saying that she is your wife. That's why I... Jungkook, and you tried to drag her out without even consulting me, he said without leaving his hand. Sir, I didn't want to disturb you over this minor issue. I thought it was best to handle it. Jungkook's grip hardened. Who decides what's a minor issue here? He asked as he twisted the secretary's wrist, and he groaned in pain. I, I apologize, sir. I thought Jungkook. Clearly, thinking isn't one of your strengths, he said and angrily left his hand, which his secretary held in extreme pain. Jungkook looked at Vine, who was standing quietly, watching her husband take control while she smiled inwardly. His eyes softened after looking at her. He went close to her, rubbing her red cheek softly as he asked, "Are you okay?" Vine nodded once. Jungkook, "You should have called me if you wanted to see me." Vine, "I left my phone in the car." He hugged her for a few seconds and then looked at his secretary. Jungkook, "You saw her, right? She is my wife. If she decides she wants to see me, you don't question it." They both nodded. Jungkook, "Now before I get you fired, think about how you can make it up to me and my wife." Then he looked at Vine and said, "Let's go." Jungkook, "You sure it doesn't hurt? Do you want ice or something?" Vine, "I'm fine. Really. And thank you. I don't know what would happen if you didn't come on time." Jungkook smiled. "So you just came unannounced, without your phone, and fine. I wanted to surprise you, but remind me to have a word with your staff about their manners." He chuckled, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Consider it done. Maybe I should teach them how to spot the only woman I'd ever let disturb me." Vine chuckled. Jungkook pulled her closer from her waist. "Next time, just call me directly." She smiled and nodded. "You know, it's not every day I get to see your mafia boss side in action." Jungkook, "Trust me, that was just a polite version for you. Next time you come here, bring chaos. I want them to know you belong to my side." Vine leaned in, whispering, "Just watch me next time." Jungkook, whispering back, "You didn't have to come unannounced. You know I would drop everything for you." Vine, "That's what I wanted." Jungkook, "Really? Then don't regret it when I get too harsh," he said and came closer and closer to her until he was almost bent 90 degrees, and he kissed her while she chuckled.